Welcome to another episode of More Than Therapy. Today, we are thrilled to welcome a guest who bridges the world of high stakes journalism with the deep therapeutic power of storytelling. Our guest spent 45 years in the trenches of journalism, including a pivotal role as a White House correspondent during the Reagan presidency. He took that deep knowledge of truth and tension and channeled it into a six award-winning mystery suspense thriller novels. But beyond the thrillers, his true specialty lies in helping people heal. He's a respected writing coach who helps wannabe writers become published authors. And that's why he's here today to help me and my partner Judith get on the road to being famous in this authoring world. He teaches people struggling with loss how to use the written word as a pathway to healing and purpose. Please join me in welcoming the journalist, novelist, and writing coach, John DeDakis.
Hello, Felipe. Good to be with you.
You as well, sir. Thank you for appearing today on the More Than Therapy podcast.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A writer, a journalist, Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today, we got to go way back. Ronald Reagan.
I know that's way back.
This is not the Today's Republican Party is a far cry from that
Oh man,
Republican Party.
he would be considered a traitor now.
Yes, yes, I'm sure he will. This is a far cry. His words have been minced and trounced upon to what we have today, and it's very deplorable. I'm not Democratic or Republican. I'm independent, but just to see what's going on today is a far cry from when I first came into America and what I seen in politics at that time.
Yeah.
But let's get away from that. Your work often involves grief and loss,
Right.
not just death, but the loss of a job, a relationship, or innocence. Can you define what writing to heal truly means in the broader context?
I think at its core, it means that you need to know yourself well. The better you know yourself, I think the better you'll be as a writer because you'll be coming from a place of personal authenticity. So I think, just at its very root, the best pathway to healing is to know yourself and then just be willing to tap into it, move toward the pain, and be able to articulate it.
You, pain. Could you walk us through the I feel sprint exercise you recommend for overcoming perfectionism and accessing deeper emotion?
I think that I think it's a strong instinct that we have to be as good as we can be. But I think that we get on thin ice when we think we can be perfect. That's an elusive goal. It's a worthy one. I think it's wise to try to be as good as you can be and to see progress there. But I think that we set ourselves up for disappointment and maybe even depression if we really feel that we're going to achieve perfection. I think that's just unrealistic. And so I think that we need to be willing to accept ourselves where we are and at the same time commit ourselves to becoming better. There's always going to be room for improvement. So, get perfectionism off the table because that's not going to happen. But be as good as you can be with a commitment to getting better. Does that help?
Does you don't strike me as a person who was in the Reagan administration all them years ago.
Well, I wasn't in the administration. I was a reporter, and
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
so
You shot from
reporters.
the hip.
That's right. Reporters are trying to find out what's really
Yes,
going on in the
yes,
administration.
yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
You describe pain as a creative force. How do we responsibly mind the pain without reliving the trauma in a harmful way? I think if you capture this for us, You
Mm,
might have just killed my practice, but that's what I always told myself. I came into this work to work myself out of the work. Let's work.
yeah, boy, that's a tough one because you have to move toward the pain and you have to feel it. You have to be willing to feel it. And our society does its best to try to anesthetize the pain, to numb it. And so I think that, we're really good at avoiding facing those traumas, and understandable too, because, sometimes they really are awful. But the point I want to make is that it's part of us. When we experience something traumatic, either through an experience or a loss of a pet or a job or a relationship or a loved one, those kind of things attach themselves to us emotionally. And the the danger is that if we don't process it, it festers, it corrodes, it's still there, and it's looking for a way to come out. And all too often, if we don't process it, if we don't address it, then it will manifest itself, but it will manifest itself in terms of anger. Not that anger itself is bad, but if it's been building and building and building without a release, then it could come out in a way that could be incredibly destructive to other people, and spreading pain and loss even farther than if we had just cried. Crying is a wonderful emotional safety valve. It's a cleanser, and I think that it's a shame that more guys like me don't cry, because I think that, it in many cases can just build to the point where, sadly, the tears can become bullets. So I think that, the responsible way to deal with it is to face it head on, and you can do that in constructive ways: poetry, journaling, writing a story, painting a picture, dance, music. Anything that's creative that comes from within you is a way of processing that. Not to mention just getting a counselor, someone who is a professional who can help guide you through these, tumultuous feelings.
Indeed, I tell people all the time, when I encourage journaling, right? I
Yeah.
say it doesn't have to be a paragraph. You don't have to think about filling the page up. It can be a sentence, a
Yep.
word. But I
Yep.
tell them if there's nothing on the word but your tears, let that be statements enough for that passage, for that day, for that time. And
Yeah.
I have many a journal that are drenched and
Mm,
buffed up with tears. The
mm,
pages are marred. Can't even read the writing anymore. But I know that those were the days that I was able to get something off my chest and
yeah.
truly heal.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I couldn't agree more. You don't. In fact, I would add one thing to that, and that is that if you're going to journal or do any kind of something that's creative, my suggestion is for the first draft, get rid of that inner scold, that editor on your shoulder going, you can't say that. Just write automatically and let the words flow uncritically. You're not writing to be fancy or writerly. You're just writing to be clear, clearly articulate whatever it is that's going on.
Indeed. You emphasize moving toward pain rather than numbing it. And we found in addiction therapy that's often what they're doing,
Yeah.
numbing the pain.
Yeah.
What does that look like on page? And how does that action build emotional strength?
How it looks on the page might be, it depends on the person, and it could be deep grooves in that, in your on your page as you write angrily. There was a person who took one of my memoir classes, and he was writing a memoir about the time that his wife was dying of cancer. And he told me that he went back and he looked at his journals, and this was several years after the event, and he said, I'd forgotten how angry I was at the time, because the act of actually capturing those feelings in real time siphoned them off, and I think in a healthy way, so that they landed on the page and enabled him to move forward. He'd forgotten how angry he was. So putting it down, chronicles the experience, but at the same time, I think it can heal and encourage healing so that you can move forward in your life and not just be stuck with those feelings. Just a thought.
That's very good advice. Very good. Thank you indeed. What's the difference in the healing process between writing a private journal or writing a memoir and crafting fictional stories informed by real grief?
Well, the first draft of a novel, I always encourage people that should also be pretty much free flowing. It's good to have an idea of where you're going to go, but good writing flows from your subconscious. It's like dipping. It's sort of what I call the spooky power of the subconscious. It's like the act of writing is like dipping a straw into your subconscious. You ask yourself what if questions, and then as you are writing, it's like taking a sip out of your subconscious and it flows through your fingers and onto the page. And so the first draft is often, a mess, but it's the first draft. And then you go back and you try to make something coherent out of it. So it's a long process. It can be a very painful process. My fourth novel, Bullet in the Chamber, which chronicles the collateral damage surrounding my son's disappearance and death due to a heroin overdose. I cried the whole time I wrote that book. But at the same time, it's not meant to be a how-to. It's meant to be a political thriller. And so I was able to process my grief, but at the same time, when all was said and done, I had crafted something that was coherent, had drama to it, and was entertaining. So it's a long process, but you can come up with something that's coherent in the end.
Sorry for your loss. I can't even imagine your pain regarding that. And I know that writing probably was as hard as it was freeing, right?
Very freeing. And I think one of the reasons that I was able to access it is that when you're writing a character, you're writing in the voice of another character, you're a little detached from it because it's not entirely your story. You're drawing from personal experience and personal emotions, but you're putting them into another character, and that gives you a little bit of distance from that. And I think it makes it more accessible and possible to do.
Indeed, indeed. What's the most common psychological obstacle you see preventing talented wannabe writers from ever becoming published? Is it fear of failure or
It,
something deeper?
I think fear of failure is pretty deep, but and I think fear really is at the root of writer's block. I think that there are many dimensions to fear. One of the things I've noticed is sort of that imposter syndrome. That feeling of you compare yourself to someone else and you immediately take yourself out of competition, or take yourself out of the race because you don't think you're good enough. And I just think that's a trap. I think the realistic way of looking at it is, sure, there are people who are better than you, and there are probably people who are not as good a writer as you. So my suggestion is, if you do find somebody who's better than you, look at what they're doing and try to understand, well, what is it that they're doing that I like, that I wish I could do, and then do your best to emulate them, identify what they're doing, and try to appropriate that tool and put it in your writing toolbox. But the I think the biggest mistake is for a wannabe writer to quit before they even start trying.
Indeed, indeed. I wrote something in 2020, early 2020, regarding the pandemic, and I never wrote again. And
Oh,
then and then something struck me. It was something that it was just so many men around me that were internally suffering, and I felt compelled to write again. So I wrote something about 6 months ago now. to speak to them that it's okay to not be okay. And that was, I hate to say it, but that was more for me than it was for the people I thought I was writing to. In essence, I was writing to myself, you know what I'm
Right. Yeah, I
saying?
do. I think,
Mhm.
and you know what? I think you put your finger on something that enables us to reach, to reach beyond the screen, to reach beyond to other people. Because I think one of the reasons we write is to connect with other people. But again, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. When we know ourselves, we're in a sense connecting with ourselves. And once we do that, I think we find that common thread that ties us together as human beings, because emotions are universal, and they cross genders and socioeconomic backgrounds and race and ethnicity and all these things. Everyone who is alive has the exact same emotions. It's just that we, process them differently. They manifest themselves differently, but inside they're all the same. And I think if we can understand that and that we have that in common, I think that's the key to being able to connect with our writing, because it's human to human. We're just writing to connect. And so we get to know ourselves. And as we articulate that truth, it resonates with other people because they recognize themselves in it.
Indeed. Let's discuss your powerful statement. Courage is fear in action.
Yeah.
How does a writer with an empty page harness their fear and move forward despite of it? Because fear is
Oh,
an acronym.
yeah.
False evidence appearing real. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
Sure. Well, look, there's what I call the fear continuum. There's recklessness, that's lack of fear altogether. There's caution, that's when we count the cost. Is this going to kill me? Am I going to lose my health or whatever? And that's a good fear to have because it helps us survive. There's cowardice, that's when we know what we should do and we freeze up. But the goal is courage. But the interesting thing about courage is that it doesn't mean it's the absence of fear. It's sort of like the guys who stormed the beaches of Normandy in World War II on D-Day. Were they afraid? They were terrified, but they went forward anyway, despite the fear. That's that's fear in action. That's courage. And so I think that the takeaway is that if we can identify what it is we're afraid of and figure out why we're afraid, and if we're writers, chances are the fear is being rejected, not being perfect, failing, all of those things, which will happen. But nobody's shooting at you. It's not a life and death situation, but it can feel like it. And so my suggestion is the way you harness the fear is you move forward anyway. You harness the fear. You don't wait for courage to show up. Courage is a byproduct of going forward in your fears. And what happens then when you find out that the result wasn't nearly as bad as what you had anticipated, then you have inner strength and you have the confidence to do the same thing again because you've been through it. It's not as bad as you thought it was. And so that courage allows you to then face the next fear and the next one and the next one.
Indeed, indeed. In both grief and writing, we face the unknown. How can we use the act of writing to deconstruct fear so we prevent the unknown from being exaggerated?
Hmm. I would say one way to do that is to get your characters talking to each other and maybe get them talking about fear and what it is that makes them afraid. And as they discuss this, especially if you're writing, just asking that question, setting your timer for 10 minutes, and then just write whatever it is you hear your characters saying to each other. You can give them actions and things like that, but the main thing is what are they saying to each other? Because I think that they will instruct you because you'll be drawing from personal experience And at the same time, this spooky power that's in us, this spooky creativity, will manifest itself. And I think the act of writing is where we get our clarity, where we can get clarity and get some answers. It's just a thought. Give it a try. I mean, prove me wrong. It'll either be the longest or the shortest 10 minutes of your life.
Indeed, indeed. Can you share an insight into the tremendous creative power of the unconscious mind and how a writer can dip a straw into that rich pool of memories?
I can give you one example. I taught this writing exercise at a conference, and I gave the exercise 10 minutes, interview your character. Who are you and why do you want to be in my book? And there was a woman who sat in on that particular session. She was actually the woman running the conference, and so she wasn't a writer. She didn't have a character in mind, but she did the exercise. And I came across her the next day, and she said to me, that was a great writing exercise, because what ended up happening, not only did a voice show up and I was able to get some answers and, write some things down, but she said, when I was taking a shower this morning, the guy showed up and said, aren't you going to ask me any more questions? And so, what ended up happening is this non-writer did the exercise, and not only did a voice show up, but the voice took on sort of characteristics of being a person, to the point where that person manifested himself again later on, and wanted more attention, wanted another opportunity to get to express himself, which I thought was amazing.
Indeed. As a former White House correspondent, what discipline did journalism teach you that has been absolutely essential for novel writing?
Several. One is, you can't just sit there and wait for the muse to show up. You can't just, when you're a reporter on deadline, you can't light a candle and, play, cool music and have little wind chimes and, kind of wait for the moment. Doesn't happen. You have to write because you're on deadline, and you just write. So that was one thing I learned. I can write anywhere, no matter what's going on. The other thing that's one of the disciplines that a journalist has is that you don't have a lot of time or real estate, a lot of space. And so you have to be efficient in your choice of words. You have to write fast, and you have to write clearly. There's no room for excess baggage. It's got to be, trim and tight. Sure, you can go back and make it better, but those were two things that spilled over into my novel writing. Is, just write. If you're sitting there and this is your session, get going, and then be as efficient as you can.
Mhm. You covered President Reagan and navigated the press course. How does that intense background lead authenticity and tension to your mystery suspense thriller novels?
Well, three of the novels are set at the White House. My fourth novel, Bullet in the Chamber, my protagonist, Lark Chadwick, and I write as a woman, by the way. She is White House correspondent for the Associated Press. And in Fake, which is book 5, she continues in that role as White House correspondent. But in this particular one, lies are being told about her, which have made national news. They are that stunning that it's become news. We, as the reader, know that the information that's being spread about her is false. And I started writing the book when Trump was elected president the first time, because he kept calling reporters enemies of the American people. And that's just not true. That's not the role of what journalists are. Journalists are to report, not persuade. And so I felt it was important for me to write a book in which it was shown that lies have consequences. And then in book 6, my most recent one, that one is entitled Enemies Domestic. The title comes from the oath of office for government officials. They pledge to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so in Enemies Domestic, Lark is White House press secretary. She's pregnant. She's ambivalent about becoming a single mom. The dad is dead. Abortion is a crime. And the first question she's asked in the daily briefing comes from a Tucker Carlson type who asks, "Are you or are you not planning to abort your unborn child?" So this personal decision, this private decision, gets thrust into the middle of this highly toxic and polarizing debate over abortion. And as it turns out, a dictator becomes president. So that's how I work these things out through my character and through, in this case, something that is involving mental illness, mental health, um, grief and loss, because she's processing the death of her boyfriend and the father of her baby. And so all of these things are in play in my most recent novel, Enemies Domestic.
I'm gonna have to read that one. Okay, is that
Yeah,
on Amazon?
that's
I
the
only buy
idea.
books on Amazon. Unfortunately, is it on Amazon?
All of the books are available, not just on Amazon. You can go to
Mhm.
a independent bookstore and order it. By this time it's been out a while, so they're probably not carrying it, but you can get it. You can order it. It
Okay.
comes through. I think it's Ingram. It's widely distributed,
Okay.
and you don't have to read the books in order. You can pick them up at any point, and you won't miss anything.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Your character, your protagonist, Lark Chadwick, is a journalist dealing with fake news and political upheaval, very
Right.
similar to what we're experiencing now, or what the journalists are being accused of, just as you formerly mentioned. But
Right.
how much of your personal concern of journalistic integrity do you channel into her journey?
Well, I mean, I know journalism, and I've taught journalism at the University of Maryland and at the American University. So, I come from, a place of experience. And when the series starts in Fast Track, Lark is just an English major dropout, college dropout, but she ends up finding herself in journalism because she uses journalistic. She works with a newspaper editor to help her solve the mystery surrounding the car accident that orphaned her as an infant. So she becomes a journalist, but she makes a lot of rookie mistakes along the way in terms of dealing with anonymous sources and things like that. So I bring my knowledge of how journalism should be done, but journalism is not perfect. Because why? Because people are the ones conducting journalism. And so you've got bad apples in the bunch, and you've got people who misuse the forum that they've got. And so Lark is trying to navigate how to be an ethical, responsible journalist when there are all kinds of pressures that are trying to push her in different directions. So I'm trying to make it realistic. Plus she's a woman, so she's trying to navigate a man's world as a woman as well. So there's a lot going on there that they don't necessarily teach you in journalism school.
Mm, okay. Mm.
I see those wheels turning.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because it's just crazy. It's just like, all this exposure you get. I don't know how the algorithms work by any means, but just like how we're being so bombarded, how we see some journalists support what I've determined to be outright lies, outright untruths in support of an administration
Yep.
that is, basically dismantling the Constitution and America's values, whatever values they are or not. Let's be real; they're just probably just peeling back the scabs of what needs to be revealed. Um, and then, yeah, we're finding it hard pressed to find genuine journalisms. Like, where do we go? Where would one go to find genuine information that's not biased or not so tainted that it actually is an untruth? What would you recommend?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question because there are reliable sources out there. Sure, there are influencers who have hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of followers, but they don't have that editor on their shoulder saying, "Where'd you get that? How do you know that's true?" And so, my suggestion, I'll give you two sources that you can go to. We're not talking broadcast journalism, we're talking print. I would recommend the Associated Press. It's been around for probably 200 years or at least 150 years. It's just the facts. And also Reuters. It's the wire service that's based in the United Kingdom. Both of those play it straight. It's just the facts. It's not meant to persuade, it's meant to inform. If you can just start there, that will help protect you from a lot of the BS that's out there right now and outright lies. Start there. I was at a conference where a woman said, "You're nothing but fake news." And I asked her, "Where do you get your news?" And she said, "Breitbart." And my jaw dropped, and because Breitbart makes it up. And she said, before I could say anything, she said, "Well, I have to have my opinion reinforced." And I go, "No, ma'am, you have to have your opinion informed. Then you can go whichever silo you want, to have your, to find other people who feel the same way you do. But yeah, start with the AP and Reuters, and you're going to be fine."
Indeed. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
As a final thought, what is the single greatest gift that writing has given you on your own path through grief?
I think that the greatest gift, and this is a surprise because it wasn't expected, and that is to be able to connect with other people. At first I was just writing to get a book published. I wasn't thinking of processing grief, or I didn't even know what my genre was. I just wanted to get published. And one of the things that happened once I got traditionally published is that doors opened to me that I never even knew existed. I was hired. People started hiring me to, edit their manuscripts, hired me to be a one-on-one writing coach. I did more motivational speaking, and I started to help people use writing as a way to heal from grief. And so, over the last 20 years, the greatest gift and the biggest surprise has been all of the people that I've met and have been able to connect with on a personal and deep level, to be able to find common ground, find common human ground. That's been, that's been such a gift that my writing has actually been read and enjoyed by other people. Who knew?
Well, sir, I knew.
Thanks.
All right, all right, all right. Well, that was such a deeply insightful conversation with John DeDakis. I learned a lot, I have to admit, about how to navigate, being a writer, being a better writer, especially as I prepare myself to write my own story or memoir of a sorts as it pertains to grief, the loss of my brother in 95, or the loss of, my marriage in 2009, or
Mm.
I don't know, the loss of a career due to bad decisions on my part, due to bad supervision. I mean, there's so many facets of what grief can be. And I thank you for giving me insight onto how to write it and having grace with myself as I do write it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man,
What
yes.
words of wisdom could you give the wannabe writers, or I would say writers that have yet to publish themselves in regards to a journey? As I tell many people who write, who have a, who I hear have a story, who I hear have something inside of them that I wish they could share, even if it's just with one other person, and I encourage them to write. What would be your encouragement in regards to such, and what words of advice could you give them on this occasion?
Oh man, if you've got an idea for a story, if people have said to you, "Oh, you should write a book," and if there's this, idea that keeps nagging at you, that tells you something. And so my suggestion is write. Just start writing. And get that story down. Don't try to make it perfect. Don't try to make it writerly or fancy, but get it down, get it finished, so that gives you that tremendous sense of accomplishment. It's not done yet because it needs to be revised, but once you've had a chance to work with it, get through it, have something to work with. I would also encourage you to go to writers' conferences, because that's where agents are looking for clients. There are also published authors there who are leading writing classes and on panels talking about their writing process, so that you can learn about the business and about the craft. I suggest taking writing classes and reading books about getting better as a writer. So there are plenty of things that you can do, but I think starting with just that raw idea, that raw desire, just start writing without worrying about its quality, but just have something then that you can show to someone and get positive and constructive feedback, so that you can then get better as a writer as well. So write and then get better.
Indeed, indeed. And thank you very much, Mr. John DeDakis. I look forward to reading your books. I'm going to go to Amazon right after this podcast because I actually had a cancellation, and that means I have bandwidth. Yeah.
Thanks, Felipe. You've made my day, man.
For those who haven't already, please subscribe to the More Than Therapy podcast wherever you listen to or watch your favorite podcast. And please go to www.johndedakis.com/books and check out this amazing journalist who's been writing and who has guided writers for as long back as some of y'all have been living. Thank you. Be well, be great, and Ubuntu. I am because we are. And I'm glad I met you today, Mr. John.
Same
Take
here,
care.
Felipe. Thank you.
Indeed. Be well.